The recording has started.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulihi. Amma ba'du. Welcome to our Thursday evening Quranic presentation. We're looking at chapter 15. We're going through chapter 15. We've been taking on different chapters in the past as we go. So we're on verse 26 and 27. We're going to look at 26 and 27 of chapter 15. And the few sources that we'll be taking a look at. And perhaps making contrasting remarks or seeing contrasting remarks in the sources that we may have discussions about either after this session. After we finish this session, we'll go to our question and answers and discussion session or in the classes. We begin with the reading Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ صَلْصَالٍ مِنْ حَمَإٍ مَسْنُونٍ. Given the general translation so that will give you kind of a bearing of where we're at. And we certainly, laqad, show certainty. Khalaqna, for those that are in the grammar class, khalaqna, that would be we past tense. We created. Al-insana, it ends in a fatha. It's related to a verb, which makes it the object of the verb. We created man. We created humanity, man. Men from salsalin. This is one of the key words we're going to be looking at. Salsalin. What is salsalin? So I won't translate it here as we go through the presentation. As students, go back and put what you have gotten from the presentation, insert it in for salsalin. It may be a phrase instead of one word. Min hama'in masnoon, and the same here. Hama'in masnoon. This class is a class for the Mali students. We use in Arabic, of course, and English. So those of you who are not familiar with the Arabic, then I would have to apologize that you're listening in on a class for the Arabic students, and I may not explain everything in Arabic. If this was a presentation to a general audience, of course, I probably wouldn't use Arabic, just use English. But this is part of the Mali students. Everyone is welcome to it. So first we'll look at the term salsalin. Salsalin from Raghib al-Isfahani. He's saying Aslu as-salsali, the root of as-salsali, giving us the root, the origin of as-salsali is taraddudu as-sawti. And this is the frequency, the reoccurrence, the frequency of sound, or like echoing, the frequency of sound. Min ash-shay'i al-yabisi. And this is from something that's dry. It's dry, it makes a sound. This is the origin of salsali. وَسُمِّيَ التِّينُ al-jafu. So the dry clay, at teen, is like clay. The dry clay is called, sumiyat is named or called salsalin. Dried clay is called salsalin. So we could take that meaning here and put it back here. Then we are saying, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ صَلْصَالٍ, from dried clay. Something, and it makes a sound. Dried clay, that makes a sound. It's dry, so it makes a sound. Now keep in mind, as we go, we're looking at basa, what we will see with our eyes, our mind, and basira, what we see with philosophically, as we see it philosophically. Elhamu, from the word here, hama'in. Elhamu, he's saying, is el hararatu el mutawallidatu. It's a generating heat. Generating heat. Men from el jawahiri el mahmiyati. From the protected substance. It's generating heat from el mahmiya, from the protected substance, like canary, like fire. Fire generates heat from a substance. Where shamsi, and the sun, it generates heat. What kadhumiza, and the hamza is placed, which I will explain. The hamza is used fi ba'adi al-lugati, in some of the languages. So here we have what he's saying here. We have el-hamu. There are times when the hamza is used, where el-hama'u, the hamza is used instead of the ya, el-hama'u. And for el-hama'u, this is still a ragib. He's saying it's tinun eswadu munattanun. It is a munattanun. We would say it is a decomposed or stinking black clay. Black clay. So if we take this and insert it here, it would be, and we created mankind, or man, from dry clay, from a decomposed black clay. Now this min, when he says min salasalin, min hama'in, he didn't say where. There is no where meaning and. He didn't say min salasalin and. So if we think of the Quran, Bil Quran, this min here, min hama'in, could be a substitute for min salasalin. So given the idea that he's defining salasalin also as black clay. Black clay. Masnunin. Okay, we'll come to it. So Ibn Arabi now, one of the tafsir sources we're looking at and contrasting with Imam W.D. Muhammad. Ibn Arabi comments on وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ صَلْصَالٍ مِنْ حَمَإٍ مَسْنُونٍ. That is to say, min al-anasiri, from elements. El-arba'ati, 4 elements. El-mumtazijati, from the mixture of 4 elements. There's a mixture of 4 elements that he's commenting on, that he's saying there's to say. What he's saying here, he's continuing by giving a comment, we say tafsir, and giving clarity. So man is created from 4, the mixture of 4 elements. If elhama'u, when elhama'u, is elhama'u, and elhama'u, we said, is when it's black clay, decomposed, stinking black clay. Huwa atinu, he is saying, it is clay. This is Ibn Arabi. When it's hama'u, he's also saying it is clay, it is teen. El-mutagayyiru, this is a changing, altering, changing or altering clay. It's altering clay. You can alter it. You can change it. Why? El-masnunu. And it's el-masnunu. So here he's going to, Ibn Arabi, we're getting the idea of masnoon. El-masnoon is ma sabba alayhi al-ma. It's what water is poured upon it. When you pour water upon the clay, it becomes in the condition that it could be influenced and given a certain form that you intend for it. If it's hard, dry and hard, it will not change its form. It's difficult to change its form without breaking it up. He's saying, what's salsalu, and salsalu ma tukhalkhila minhu bil hawa'i. So ma tutalkhuhu, to khalkhalu, it becomes loose. If what becomes loose? It becomes loose by hawa, by air, where to jaffifu, and it becomes dry bil harara, by the heat. So here are 4 elements that we're given here, the 4 elements. Teen, clay, earth, el-ma, water, el-hawa, air, wind, bil-harara, heat, fire. So we have earth, water, air or wind, and heat, fire, are the 4 elements. These four elements. Keep that in mind. Now, if we're talking Basira, we're not talking, and we're talking about the human being and his creation, its creation, then we're not talking about clay. The clay, you go outside, you dig up the earth, and there you have clay and water, the air outside, the fire, the heat. That's not Basir, that's Basa, if you want to think that way. But keep in mind, as students, and we'll discuss later, this topic, we're going to continue with it. It's going to come up again during the Ramadan session. And then I will have more time to give more to this topic. I can't do it in the hour time, that 1 hour that I give myself time to do this on Thursday. There's a lot to this presentation. So I'm giving you more or less hints and things, ideas and notes on it, but we'll cover it in more depth during the month of Ramadan, when I will give myself time, inshallah. So the Imam is saying to this, so clay in its salt form, tells us about the impressionable nature of people. So you see, this is language. This is language from creation, things created that we see is speaking a language to us. And the Imam is showing us this language under the idea of Basira. That with these four elements, it tells us about the impressionable nature of people. They are easily influenced. When you mix these four elements together, it becomes easily influenced. Their minds can be changed. Mutagayyir. They become changing clay. Their minds can be changed. Their minds can be shaped and formed. Their sentiments, etc., can be shaped by influences in their environment. All of this is part of these four elements. But they can also become in time convinced of that particular idea, principle, or whatever it is. So much so that they become rigid. Yes, like the potter's clay. Too much air, too much heat can cause the clay to become hard. You can give it form. But if you let it sit too long in the sun, and too much air and heat is given to it, it'll dry the water out and it'll become hard. That's a person who becomes very rigid, very hard and rigid. They take on an idea or principle and they become so rigid, it's hard to change them. So this is telling us that in this behavior nature of ours, this sensitive nature of ours, we can be influenced and can be shaped by the influences. And then we can become convinced of that particular mind, principle, or idea, as he said, and become rigid, hard, or fixed, that we can't be changed. We don't want that. You become so hard, you lose your water substance, you lose your sentiments. That you can't repent. You don't seek forgiveness because you can't change and you don't want to change. Understand that point. Now let's continue. In 27. وَلَجَنَّا خَلَقْنَاهُ min kablu min neri asamumi. And the jinns. Now here we have two creatures, insan, and now we have jinns. The jinn. We created it from before, from fire of Samum, the fire of Samum. We won't translate it right now. We'll come back to it. Aslul Jinni, the origin of jinn. Now, many of you may not be prepared for this class, for this conversation, and many of you have been prepared. Because we have all kind of ideas what a jinn is. Aslu al-jinni. Sitru al-shay'i an al-hassati. It's the covering of something from the senses. From the senses. The senses are covered. You're not able to use your senses, your five senses. Let me make a side remark. It was said at one time, I believe in the Constitution, that the Negro, African American, Black, whichever name you want to give it, I think they use Negro in the Constitution, only constituted 3/5 of a man. 3/5. Why are they using fifths? Why are they using 5? The language is he doesn't use all of his senses when making decisions and judgments. He's missing 2 main senses. There's 2 main senses he does not use. Thereby, he's only 3/5. 3/5. So the jinn is someone who doesn't use their senses. Not the senses in terms of basar, the senses in terms of basir. You can see with the eyes, but you're blind in your spirit. You can hear with the ears, you can hear sounds, but you're blind to the spirit of the sound, the meaning of the sound. Like you're blind to the language, the messages that Allah has given that we're going over now, that the great scholars have deciphered. So this is the jinn in appearing in the form of the human being. You have the human, you have the jinn in the same bodily form. So Ibn Arabi says, وَالْجَنَّةِ, that is to say, he's continuing, that is to say, Aslu al-Jinni, the root of the jinn. وَهُوَ جَوْهَرُ الرُّوحِ الْحَيَوَانِ. الجوهر, it is the substance. El-Jawharu, the substance of the animal-like spirit, the animal spirit. Now, man has a spirit. He has a spirit. He has his animal spirit already. He has that animal spirit. But also, there's another spirit. Now, perhaps his animal spirit, we could say, comes from the first breath. Then there's another breath that he's given of a divine spirit, though he's not divine. You have to keep these presentations. I'm sure you're following the students. He's not divine, but he has a spirit from the divine one, though he's not divine. And he says, when I have blown into him of my spirit, in these four elements, there's the spirit. He has a spirit in these four elements. We're referring to it as the animal spirit. But when I give him of my spirit, then he says to the angels, then bow down to him. Yes, that's another spirit. And when he's given that spirit, like I said, I'm just going to say it now. We'll get more in depth during Ramadan. We bring him into another creation. This creation that we're looking at so far, we could say, is the microcosm of the greater macro creation. That's Greek philosophy, if you want to say. But Allah is saying that we bring him into another creation, which is not the creation that we're already looking at. It's another creation. So technically, man is not the microcosm of the macrocosm in his spirituality. He's another creation. And when I breathe into him of my spirit, he's of another creation. Bow down to that new creation. Yes. Yet, it's not a divine creation. I'll say enough there. Alladhi which tawalladu minhu. We're still talking about the jinn now. He's talking about the jinn. He's given the root of the jinn is an animal spirit, the substance of animal spirit, which generates from it Kawad, or we say Kawad generates from it, Kawad al-Wahmi. The power or the force of illusions. Where tahayyili and imagination. Illusion and imagination were ghairihi mad. And other than those two. This is the jinn. This is Ibn Arabi speaking of the jinn. And we're also, if we combine it with Ragib, when he says it's the covering of something from the senses. And if we go to the Constitution, we could say they could be saying that this Negro is a jinn. He only uses 3 of his senses. He's not complete human. He's human and he's jinn. And the jinn may be dominating in him due to the 2 senses, the important senses, that he does not use, that's covered. That's enough to reflect on if I just quit right now. Now, let's go back to Aragib, Asumu. Looking at the word now, Asamun. We looked at the word jinn from Ragib and from Ibn Arabi. Let's look at Asamum. Here, Asamum. Asamu wa Asummu. These are both internal nouns. These are internal nouns that's given us the meaning of Samum. Samum is derived from the internal noun assemble, or we say from the masdar, assemble, is kullu thakbin, is every or each opening, dayikin, each narrow opening, kahadaki el ibrati, like the opening of the needle, like the hole of the needle. It's a narrow opening. With thakbi el anfi, or the hole or the opening of the nose. Well, udhuni, or of the ears. So we have 7 openings. I'm going to add to this now. I'm adding to, this is not ragib, I'm adding to it. There are 7 openings. The mouth, there's an opening. The 2 nostrils, that's 3. The ears, that's 5. And the eyes, that's 7. 7 openings. Wasamumu, now Ragib, he defines as samum, the word that we're looking at. He says it's arihu el harratu. It's a hot wind. A hot spirit. This spirit, wind, we talked about wind last week. It's a hot wind. Allati, which to atharu ta'thira as-summi, which influences the summi, which the summi are narrow openings. So these narrow openings are influenced by the hot wind. Yes. Now, connect that with the idea of the jinn, without me having to go through it. He continues, this is Ibn Arabi now, one of the great thinkers in the history of Islam, especially when it comes to basira. خلقناه من قبل من نار السموم. That is to say, min el hararati. And you can see the scholars. These are different scholars, how they're very similar. Min el hararati, that's to say from heat. El gariziyati, from a natural heat, natural impulse. Natural impulse. Wa min bukhariyati, and from steam driven by steam, el akhlati, mixture. The mixture is steam driven. Yes. In the by way of, I'm going to say, of the openings. وَلَطَافَتِهَا, and its civility, its gentleness, and its civility, al-mustahilati, is somewhat impossible. This jinn that we have created from the fire of Samum, a natural impulse, heated impulses. Think about it. That's steam driven. Steam. You know how maybe you don't know, but you may have seen on TV, they put coal in the engine. You run in the locomotive, you put coal to generate steam. And that steam is going to cause that engine to run, that train, to pull that train. This it's called a steam engine. And they're using steam to pull it. And the higher you turn that steam up, the faster it's going to go. This jinn is operated by this steam. that's influenced through or by the openings. قال, he said, therefore, اخرج منها فإنك رجيم. فاخرج, he's saying, then اخرج, then get out. من جنة عالم القدس, from the garden of the realm of the holy. The world of the holy, the realm, the high elevated realm of your spirituality, which you have elevated, you have evolved and elevated towards its horizon. Yes. You don't belong up here as that kind of creature. It means, commenting on this, Imam W.D. Muhammad, it means the fire is blazing. The fire is blazing, or it's burning free. It's blazing or burning free, this fire of Samun, without resistance. Man's passions. See, now he's going to take it from the obvious, Basar, to that which is not obvious, Basir. Man's passions lead him. This fire is the fire of man's passions that have been influenced through or by these openings. If he gives into his passion will lead him to follow a particular idea or a particular point with no resistance, with no restraints on him, with no checks on himself at all. And I'm going to add these passions. This fire will dry out the water and cause you to become hard. Imam continues, when we decide to believe in something passionately, then we lose curiosity. We lose the fear that we're wrong. We don't even fear being wrong. Why? Because there are no restraints. There's nothing to check the fire. There is nothing to protect the fire, to keep it in check. We talked about the protected, right? The protected from the fire from a protected substance. It has to protect it. It's not protected. And when it's not protected, the openings are not protected. There's no protection on the opening. So the passions will blind us, as he continues, blind us to the circumstances and cause us to move without regard for the circumstances. Once the fire dries out, especially, it dries out the water. Now this creature is moving like a jinn. It's moving more upon the element of fire than anything else because it is dried out. Yes. It's influencing it. It has become hardened, and now it's not taken into consideration of the moral consequences of its actions or its thinking, and it has become hardened that it will not seek forgiveness or repent. And we find that we're just going head on blindly toward an objective unchecked. There's a lot to say on this subject, as I have said. And I know we're planning to pick this up during the month of Ramadan. In conclusion, we want to remain in the influential state with a rational mind coming from the clay. The clay is the rational. Our rational abilities is from the clay. With emotions from the air. Gives us our emotion, the winds of emotion. The rational mind with the winds of emotion. And the passions checked by water. We want to stay in that state. We don't want to be in a state of a jinn dominated by fire, and we don't want to be in the state of being hardened. It's two of them, hardened. We want to stay in the state of Sasalin Hama'in Masnun. The four elements stand proportionally along with the second breath, with His Spirit, with the Spirit of Allah that comes from revelation. I thank you for your time. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum.
This session is no longer being recorded.